Hello, everybody. I'm Thirteene, and we're going to be trying to do something a little bit unique today. So, we're going to start off with Brewing and Legacy. And this is kind of a change from our general content where we kind of just run decks through things. I know Brad One's been covering some more of the competitive stuff. I've been covering just a bunch of jank, kind of established stuff, and whatever I'm playing with. But if you enjoy this special content, let us know in the comments. Just let us know in general. I'll try to get a little bit more out there. But when I'm watching other streamers, a lot of chat is always like, are you ever going to brew on stream? And most of the time they say no because it's kind of a painful experience. But I'm kind of trying to give this a shot just so that we can try to figure out what we want to do. So we're starting a little early today, and we're going to be brewing with Squirrel Nic Fit. And kind of go over the process of how to start all of this. So again, let me know if this is something that you're interested in. We're going to toss the video out there, see how it does. But for now, we're going to start brewing. So typically, whenever you start to build a deck, first thing that you want to do is start with something established. Yes, you might have a cool idea for yourself, but established decks work. They've kind of gone and done all the hard lifting. They kind of set the land count, they set the general theme. Like, if you look through most of my random decks, like, let's just go ahead and take, sure, Teferi Lock. This is kind of a recent one. This started off as Jeskai Control. We ended up having a bunch of the 1-drops, a bunch of the 2-drops. Like, we took an established deck, and then we ended up putting a couple of our own fun cards in here that there are like 10 flex slots. 10 cards significantly changes the style of the deck, and it makes it so that it has a unique theme to it. I guess Slovenia is technically in here. So we had 12 unique cards here, and we did pretty strong just based on these cards here. These 25 cards that are pretty stock to a competitive deck, they work, and then we did something fun with 12 of them. It gave the deck a really unique feel. Drawing Possibility Storm is just fun, and it was the general concept of the deck. But for the most part, everything here, everything in these cards were already existing. And so we're going to be doing that today with Legacy. So there's kind of a funny joke running around where Nic Fit is a deck in Legacy that isn't taken very seriously because the joke is, what random crap can I put in my Nic Fit deck and still win? As opposed to, what's the best collection of cards? So it's called Nic Fit, and it's short for Nice Fit because a lot of the cards actually work pretty well together. Let's actually go to MTG Goldfish for this. So typically when I start looking at decks, I end up pulling these 3 pages up: Scryfall, MTG Top 8, and MTG Goldfish. So MTG Goldfish does something really cool where Nic Fit's kind of a smaller deck, but they tell you what the numbers are for general decks, so you can get a general feel of like what's a requirement for this archetype and what's just a good card for it. But MTG Top 8 can tell you what's actually performing well. These are tuned lists. They're usually pretty good to subscribe to. And then Scryfall is, like, if I actually look at some of these, I have like Is Split cards. I have Format Modern. I'm pretty sure that if I go type artifact that's not a creature but has an Oracle tech for creature, like, you can get really complicated with the syntax that you can find over here and find things that are common for your deck. So let's go ahead and start off with Nic Fit, and it's called Nice Fit because of the way that the cards work together. So first and foremost, you start off with this Veteran Explorer. When it dies, each player can search their library for up to 2 basics and put them into the battlefield, and then anybody that searched shuffles their library. Well, the general idea is we're going to run out of Veteran Explorer and then have a way to kill it. And that gives us Cabal Therapy. So if you understand the metagame pretty well, you can normally name Cabal Therapy. There's a lot of cards that reveal things like Stoneforge Mystic and Delver of Secret, so you can usually get a guaranteed hit. But most important is this flashback of sack a creature. So we can go with like a turn 1 Veteran Explorer. We can go with the turn 1 Cabal Therapy, then run out the Veteran Explorer and sack it for the flashback. But we sack the creature, then we go tutor up lands, put them into play, and typically we run a really high basic land count. Like, we have 3 forests here, 2 plains, 2 swamps, and our opponents, like especially if they're Delver, aren't going to be running any basics at all. So this is hopefully going to ramp us at least 2 additional lands, and then we're going to play something that's like 4 or 5 mana that's just really hard to deal with in the format. We're going to get Pernicious Deed so we can clear the board. If we actually sacrifice the Veteran Explorer to the Phyrexian Tower, that's as much as 4 mana just off of that, plus the one that you had when you originally ran out the Veteran Explorer, so that's 5 mana on turn 2. Like, you can just do some really big explosive things that these Toon decks really can't handle very well. So let's go ahead and open up our deck here, and we're going to start filling out these cards for Nic Fit. First one is the Veteran Explorer. Got 4 of these guys, we need to add them to the deck. We have the Cabal Therapy. Add 4 of these to the deck. Again, these cards are just a really nice fit together, and they help us start brewing our deck. So beyond this, what we end up getting in this archetype is a couple of things. So we are going to be running the Green Sun Zenith version of this deck, and what this does is it allows us to tutor up our Veteran Explorer because it's the core part of our combo. So these are going to be copies number 5 through 8 of Veteran Explorer. So let's go ahead and get our Green Sun Zenith. Oh boy, should have put in more letters. We get all 4 of these guys, and then anybody who's actually played Legacy is actually familiar with just paying green for the Green Sun Zenith and going up and tutoring the Dryad Arbor. So we get our forest creature. Then on top of that, this deck ends up running a couple of Pernicious Steeds. It looks like it's 3 in the deck that MTG Goldfish has on the side. I've kind of been running this version of Squirrel Nic Fit, and I haven't actually played Nic Fit before, and I've been a little out of Legacy since Deathrite Chum got banned, so I gave this a couple of runs and found out that 2 is going to be the sweet spot that I want to have Pernicious Steed at. So this is kind of the core for Nic Fit, and we need these cards. So we're going to start here. Then beyond that, we're going to be green-black, so we need to go get our dual lands. We need to go get our fetch lands. Sylvan Library is an amazing card. I'm only at 1 of them just because we're trying to jam so many Squirrel cards, but this allows us to actually draw additional cards and try to tutor things that are important. Also, being able to sacrifice our Veteran Explorer, it gives us a very powerful effect in Legacy that allows us to actually shuffle our deck. So I'm going to go ahead and toss one of these guys in here, if I can find it. So Sylvan Library is at the beginning of your draw step. You may draw 2 additional cards. If you do, you can pay 4 life to keep that card or put them back on top of your deck. So we get a look at the top 3. If we don't like it, we can go shuffle with Verdant Catacombs or our Veteran Explorer. Just a really, really powerful card, and one of the few ways in Legacy to get card advantage. Then what we want to do is kind of compare to what a competitive list had done. So Karakas is actually a really powerful utility land, and we don't like Thalia in our deck. We really, really don't like Thalia. So being able to bounce her and being able to cast all of our non-creatures are great. So I'm going to run a Karakas just because this is part of the metagame. I'm counting this as a colorless source, and along that same line, I'm going to be running a Pendelhaven. So I've heard a ton of people say if people thought Pendelhaven tapped for a colorless, they'd include it in more decks. But we're going to have 1/1s all across this deck, so we're going to be running these 2 utility lands of Karakas and Pendelhaven. So this will allow us to grow a creature outside of range for a Snapcaster or a young Pyromancer, and this will allow us to bounce legendary creatures like Emrakul, Grizzlebrand, Thalia. Like, this is just a lot of utility in Legacy, so these are going to be 2 of our utility lands. Then on top of that, this is a utility land that will allow us to sack our Veteran Explorer, and I really like Crop Rotation. So Crop Rotation will allow us to sack a land and go tutor for another land. So given the fact that we have 3 utility lands that we kind of want to see, I'm going to include one of these guys. It's typically not uncommon to get wastelanded and then crop rotate the land that they're trying to wasteland and just go get another land. So this is a one of, this is a fun of, this is my personal taste of something that I want to do. And on that note, Wasteland is one of the best utility lands in Legacy. You can sack it to destroy a non-basic land, to get rid of your opponent's utility lands, to try to mana screw them. Like, it's just a fantastic card. Again, from running this list, I know I need 3 of them, so I'm going to go ahead and run the 3 of them. And this is starting to shape up like a pretty decent Legacy deck here, but we want to play Squirrels. So next thing that's up is kind of like look through this. One of the nice things about this Green Sun Zenith is that it allows us to tutor up a single of utility card. So we can actually go search for something that's relevant. And my typical Green Sun Zenith package is anything between 1 to 3 drops that can just work in different situations, one of which is Reclamation Sage. So this will destroy an artifact or an enchantment. I love being able to tutor one of these to try to take out a Trinisphere, a Chalice of the Void. We have a lot of 1-drops as it is, and this is our primary combo, so Chalice is really bad for this deck. And we can get around Trinisphere, but if Trinisphere comes out and our opponent's buying a lot of time by us stumbling, then it just makes it really hard because they're going to be dropping like Eldrazi or big Blood Moony effects, and it's just really hard to come back from. So I like having this as a tutor target. It's also pretty good to have a Scavenging Ooze, just that we can eat the graveyard, and an Eternal Witness to pick up something that we actually care about. So just a couple of utility creatures here. Rex Sage, Skooz, Ewit, and that's just because of the power of Green Sun Zenith. So let's come back and take a look at this. This list is running a Courser as a utility creature. I kind of don't necessarily care about that too much. Random Map Excavator. You may play lands from your graveyard. So if we actually end up getting a Wasteland, we can lock our opponents out. So I'm going to go grab one of those as well. Ram? I think it's Ram. Yep. Alright, so toss one of these guys in as another tutor target. Scavenging Ooze, Tireless Tracker. So I really like Tireless Tracker for the control matchup to try to draw cards. I can't remember exactly where I ended up on it, but I probably at least want to put him in the graveyard as in the sideboard for consideration for control matchups. For Veteran Explorers is pretty commonplace. Bog is good for graveyards, but I was having issues with it entering tapped and not having enough black sources, so I'm going to try to keep Bog out of this list. Ghost Quarter is interesting. It's in here to try to take out basics, and with the Excavator, you can end up just hard locking your opponent out of lands. Honestly, don't care that much. Abrupt Decay and Assassin's Trophy are definitely considerations. So when was this? It was March 17th. Assassin's Trophy was out by then, but I really like Assassin's Trophy. So we need ways to actually interact with things, so I'm going to toss 3 of those in there. And because counterspells are a thing, I'm going to include a couple of Abrupt Decays on the side, probably just about 2. These are just good sideboard cards that I know I have utility for. Let's see, is there anything else that we want? So Toxic Deluge is actually a metagame call for Legacy. All creatures get -X/-X, and that's because of True Name Nemesis. I think there's a hyphen there. Yeah, there is. So True Name Nemesis gets protection from the chosen player. Protection's anagram, I think it is debt. It can't be damaged by, equipped by, blocked by, or targeted by. So it's really hard to get rid of True Name Nemesis. I know a lot of people that play Legacy really hate this card, but we need a way to give it -1/-1, and seeing as how we are in green-black, I actually want Golgari Charm. So this can regenerate all of our creatures, can kill a True Name Nemesis, or get rid of an enchantment. So I'm actually going to include both of these in the sideboard. Other options are Massacre, but opponent has to be on Stoneblade for this to be relevant. This can also hit Death and Taxes pretty hard. And another option is Zealous Persecution if we're white. We're not really white. Toxic Deluge is obviously an option. Like, this list was running it for that reason. Maelstrom Pulse is a card. I could technically be running it. Nissa Vital Force is fantastic. I'm actually also going to be adding the utility land of Gaia's Cradle, just because we're going to have a lot of squirrels that we care about. This will tap for green for each creature that we control. The way that Elves uses this is they tap the Gaia's Cradle. I don't think they have one, do they? Nope. So they tap the Cradle and get 5 mana, and then they put out Nissa and untap a land. They untap the Cradle and then tap it again for 5 more mana. This Nissa is essentially free. We're not going to be doing that in this deck, but I love my fun of. So what I'm actually going to be running is the new Liliana Dreadhorde General. So whenever a creature you control dies, draw a card. We're hopefully going to have a ton of squirrels that's going to be relevant. We can create a 2/2 black zombie token. We can make our opponent sack 2 creatures, which in Legacy, Young Pyromancer and Monastery Mentor make that a little complicated, but they can also get rid of True Name Nemesis. It can get rid of Grizzlebrand and Emrakul. Basically, there's a couple of different options there. And this is kind of just relevant to our deck, but most importantly, it's our fun of. And Liliana Last Hope is actually in this list as well, if I'm not mistaken. Oh no, she was in this one. One Lily. This can pick off Snapcaster, it can pick off Young Pyromancer, it can mill and pick up one of our creatures like an Eternal Witness, or basically the Skoos, the Veteran Explorer. Like, she just has a ton of utility for this deck. Then Liliana's Triumph is actually a card that I'm going to include at least one of. I'm potentially going to put one in the sideboard as well. This can get a Merit Lage token, especially through a Leyline, so it feels relevant. I'm going to, I think I ended up with 2 in the main board for this list, but we can play around with that. Then beyond that, Vraska was probably just a test. I don't really like the effect that I've been getting there. Other than that, though, we're pretty up to date with everything that we need here. So this list had white. I do like Collective Brutality in the sideboard for burn. So I don't think there's actually much burn on MTGO, but I could be mistaken. But I'm just going to part 2 these over here as a way to gain life and kind of remind me about it when I go to shore up my deck list. Beyond that, Choke is fantastic. Definitely going to get a Choke in the sideboard. So Choke's going to make it so that islands don't untap. This is really good against Miracles. It's really good against Delver. I probably don't want both. We technically have the Wasteland lock in our deck, so this feels pretty confident. Sorcerer's Spyglass is okay. I'm not overly concerned about it. Runic Armasaur looks like it was a spicy try-of from M19. I think that this was in here mainly for... it's not Grizzlebrand. I'm blanking on it. Either way, not going to be including him. Toxic Deluge again. True Name Nemesises are really, really hard to deal with. But that's about the core of the deck I feel like I need to extract from this list. As far as this one, they have a lot of fun ofs in here. The Abrupt Decays are 4 of. Hymn to Turok is usually pretty common in these lists because you can sack Veteran Explorer, go get 2 swamps, and make your opponent discard 2 cards at random. This can also help Mana Screw your opponent or take out their threats. Diabolic Edict is basically going to be our Liliana's Triumphs because they're newer. Duress, so I think Thoughtseize could be a consideration here. Yeah, this guy's running the Golgari Charms as well. We need a way to kill True Name Nemesis. Lost Legacy's in here for Storm. Basically, go take out the Tendrils. Massacre, again, is really good against Death and Taxes. The other card that's pretty good is White Creatures get -1/-1. I think this works. Yep, Dread of Night. Dread of Night is quite good against Death and Taxes, but I kind of don't care. We're going to be casting bigger stuff than our opponent. Lily can solve a lot of answers. Big Lily solves a lot of answers, but we are a Squirrel deck, and we need to come back to that. So right now we're currently at 40 cards. We have 14 lands. Coming back, again, these established decks usually do a pretty good job of making sure that they're fairly well tuned, especially if they're winning tournaments. This one is 23 lands with 1, 2, 3 utility lands. And this is 21 lands with 2 utility lands, but that's technically a land, and no Caracas. So we want to probably start off with at least 22, 23 lands. So I'm going to come in here, grab Forest of Choice, and just for now I'm going to add that, and I actually probably just want a Windswept Teeth in here. All the fetch lands that can grab Dryad Arbor are pretty good, especially with the Guy's Cradle. So this is a start for our lands. We're going to definitely clean up the forests. We need to get a couple of swamps, but we have about 11 cards, which feels pretty good for flex slots. So as long as we're a Squirrel deck, let's go ahead and go in here and just search for Squirrel. So Chatter of the Squirrel. This is going to be similar to having a Young Pyromancer in our deck. It's going to give us 2 tokens. It's going to be a sorcery. Give us some stuff here. So I'm going to add some Chatter of the Squirrels. Honestly, they're not the most impressive cards in the deck, so I'm just going to start with 2. We can figure out where we're at after we get a couple more options going. Squirrel Nest is the card that I really want to play with. So it gets to enchant a land and put a 1/1 green squirrel token into the battlefield. And as long as it sticks around, we get the ability to do this turn after turn after turn, and Legacy can go on. You're either going to die to reanimate or kind of grind it out. Again, token every turn is pretty strong. So let's go ahead and grab Squirrel Nest. And I'm going to toss all 4 in there. We're going to be cutting this back, but this is the card that I most wanted to play with, so we're going to run with it. And also of note, this enchants a land. So this is going to change our land count at least somewhat drastically compared to what our prefab decks, our model decks, I don't know what to call these. Basically the gold decks. The gold decks, this is going to need more land. So we're currently at 23. I'm just going to add another forest in here. We're probably going to end up around 24 because we're going to turn one of our lands into a spell land. And that's kind of what our wastelands are. So this feels kind of strong to start off at. Squirrel Wrangler, we can sack a land, put 2 squirrels into play. We can sack a land to give all squirrels +1/+1. Honestly, not overly concerned about that. So that's everything with Squirrel in the name. Let's go ahead and look for Squirrel in Oracle text. For Nic Fit? Oh, War. Yeah, War's been a little rough for me. Honestly, I haven't liked it too much. It's very swingy. It's very bomb-oriented. Like, the number of times that I've basically seen a Wanderer land and proliferated and exile 3 creatures has just been kind of a painful experience for Limited for me. It just feels so heavy on what did you pull. Like, New Nissa is really good. Gideon is almost impossible to deal with. 2 indestructible creatures on turn 3. Like, War's been a little rough. Acorn Catapult is cute, but it costs 4 and then 1 and has to ping something. Almost everything we have in our deck is going to die by taking 1 damage. So I'm going to kind of skim over that one. 4 mana for Acorn Harvest, 2 squirrels, pay 3 life. It's a little priced out of Legacy. Deranged Hermit is fantastic, and anybody who's played Legacy Cube knows the power of Deranged Hermit. So let's go ahead and go grab him. At 5 mana, he needs to do a lot, and honestly, getting a couple of 1/1s out there isn't much. I'm going to just start with 2 of them. He seems like 2 is a fine spot. We have ways to ramp up to 5 mana on turn 2, but like putting 4 squirrels out with 5 mana isn't powerful, especially as far as Legacy is concerned. This is going to be competing with Jace and Terminus and things along those lines. Druid's Call, whenever it's dealt damage, you get that many squirrels. Honestly, Swords to Plowshares is a thing. We really don't want to deal with that. Squirrel Mob, 1/1 for each other squirrel in play. So this is going to require a board state. And if we do go back and kind of look at these cards that can deal with True Name Nemesis, so we have... this one might be a little easier. So Toxic Deluge. They can just pay 1 life and kill all of our squirrels. That's not great. Golgari Charm. Even if we cast this, it's going to kill all of our squirrels. Pernicious Deed is going to destroy everything that's a token for free. I don't really imagine having a lot of squirrels. I'm guessing this is going to be 3 mana for a 2/2. So I think I'm going to skip on that. But this guy right here, Swarm Yard, regenerate a squirrel. So being able to block something massive that doesn't have trample, like a Gurmag Angler, and regenerate it, basically fogging combat every turn, seems fantastic. So let's go ahead and add another utility land in here. Swarm Yard. Alright, well, we went up to 25 lands, so let's trim a forest. And we're looking at about 2 more cards to fill our deck. So what did I actually add in this one? We end up having 3 Assassin's Trophies, Sylvan Library. Did I ever add the Sylvan Library? I did. So, Chatter of the Squirrel. Ooh, Arbor Elf. So that's a pretty good one. Arbor Elf is going to untap a forest, and seeing as how Wasteland is a thing, you can destroy any non-basic, so I'm probably not going to be putting it on Bayou, as most of our opponents will have anywhere between... I guess a couple of the more greedy decks are going to have 0, but a lot of decks end up running anywhere between 2 to 4 Wastelands. So Arbor Elf will be able to untap our basic forest that has Squirrel Nest on it and give us 2 squirrels a turn, and having a single one to tutor off of seems pretty great. So let's go ahead and go add that guy. Arbor Elf. And then Garuk. So untap 2 lands, create a beast token, and overrun. So overrun's going to allow us to actually, with the Drainage Tournament, assuming it sticks around, we can overrun to give this be a 4/4 with trample and have 4 5/5s with trample. So this is actually a lethal combo right here. So let's go ahead and go add Garuk. I had 2 in the other deck just because he really helps our combo, as well as being able to untap 2 lands, which can have Squirrel Nest in them. Feels pretty good. And then the other card that I had in here was Craterhoof Behemoth. So anybody who plays elves knows exactly how strong this is. This can one-shot your opponent out of nowhere. And it's also a Green Sun Zenith target. So if we end up Drainage Tourmating and we have a Guy's Cradle out, that's going to tap for 5 mana, and if we cast Drainage Tournament, we already had 5 mana, so Craterhoof is definitely castable and Green Sunzable. Let's go ahead and go add that guy. We do have a lot of cards pretty similar to elves, so this is when I end up going back and looking at competitive decks. So I can go Legacy Elves. Again, we go look for an established deck. Dryad Arbor is a really good target. We only need 1 of those, though. Birchlore Rangers, all these are just elves, part of the combo. Elvish Visionary seems like a pretty decent card to replace itself, but we're kind of filling up on stuff in our deck. Skooz, Rex Sage. Then this is when we see something like Archon of Valor's Reach, where this looks like it's a tutor target for Green Sun Zenith that's both in this deck and this deck. Is this something that we actually want to include? So we're not adding white. We don't have the Quirion Elf that can tap for white. But Flying Vigilance Trample, when it enters, we can choose a card type, and players can't cast cards of the chosen type. At 6 mana, that's quite powerful and definitely within range for excuse me, almost died there. It's definitely castable, but our deck doesn't have any white in it. So I'm feeling like it's not worth it. I guess we technically have the Caracas. We could put a Plains to Tutor in here. We could put in a Savannah, but if you've watched any of my modern videos, I really like the consistency of 2-color decks. And I'm actually going to go ahead and pop this up really quick since Hellraiser's chatting. Let's go ahead and remove our overlay. Just finished my PT this afternoon. Going to start gaming streaming myself. Sure, it sounds like a lot of fun. Right now I'm going to be brewing this and then queuing up for a Legacy League. Really want to give Squirrels the shot. But as far as our deck right now, I don't like that Squirrel Nest has to hit a land, so I'm probably going to trim on a number of these. We have a lot of synergies to untap and a lot of ways to go tutor it, so I'm probably going to try to keep both of him in here. Single Arbor Elf. Again, our deck is super weak to Chalice. We got a couple of Chatter the Squirrels in here, and they can also be sacked to the Cabal therapies. They can be regenerated with our Swarm Yard. Liliana's Triumph. Kind of need to figure out what to do with that, because I like having it. We technically have 2 Lilianas, so we could turn on the discard, but this is more in here as a consideration to get around Merit Lage, just because we kind of don't have an answer for that other than the Caracas. We do have the crop rotation, go try to tutor it up. Ewit, Rex Sage. I kind of like everything here. A lot of the decks that we looked at had 23 or 21 lands, but I mean, I could go down to 23. That actually seems kind of fine. As far as sideboard, though, so we have a couple of options to get rid of. Okay, just expand that out. We can get rid of another Merit Lage token. We have some Burn Hate. We have some Control Hate. We can get rid of True Name Nemesis. What else do we actually care about here? I might go up to 2 chokes. Dredge is going to be absolutely horrible, so I think I'm going to go up to the full 4 ley lines in the side. If we do kill a Veteran Explorer quick enough, we can actually hardcast it. And what else are these guys running? So we can Have the Edict, which we have. We could have Discard. Fairy Macabre's in here as just a way to get rid of graveyard things that matter. Lost Legacy. Storm's going to be quite bad, so Storm Hate, we could potentially be running Thorn. Maybe I just don't have it. Amethyst? Whatever. Let's just go Modern. Damping Sphere. We can run 2 of these guys. Ooh, I did like the Tireless Tracker, though. Let's go up to 2 trackers. We can cut a Triumph. Maybe just 3 ley lines. Fair enough. I like to play with my sideboards like a little loose. You can try to meta tune as much as you want in your local meta, but for online, you can play just about anything, and this seems pretty fair. We have a little bit of Burn Hate. We can get rid of a True Name Nemesis. Do I actually have a Toxic Deluge? I do not. Well, I'm not going to place an order to go get one. This is serviceable. So I'm going to go ahead and kill the YouTube recording really quick and basically call that Brewing. This feels safe enough for me. We have a couple of really good game plans. We can lock people out. We can generate a ton of squirrels. We can crater hoof them to death. We can just get a bunch of tutus out and actually be relevant on board. We have tutorable hate. We have fairly strong turn 2 plays. We have answers for the metagame. This is essentially what I look for in a deck, although I do need to fix lands. So let's grab a Swamp. And let's get something we have a decent number of. So, Lorwyn Swamp. 4 is fine. 3 is fine. So basically what we're looking for here is a decent number of basics that we can go tutor when this dies. And that seems like a fair number. So 23 lands, couple of 1-drops, couple of things on the top end, Green Suns. Good enough for me. So when I have been trying to run this through Legacy, it's been a little painful. You can see what I was playtesting with. The issue with Squirrels is it's doing things, and Nic Fit is a valid strategy, but it's not very powerful on its own.